We have an email here from Sandy. She says, Dr. Berman, I've always chosen narcissistic men, as my dad is one, to have relationships with. I've been to therapy about it. I'm trying to change my ways. Now I'm seeing a nice guy, and I can't help but pick him apart. He's wonderful to me, but I think I've convinced myself that I'm not sexually attracted to him. Or maybe it's because he's a nice guy. What do you suggest I do to turn this around? Yeah, I mean, Sandy, that's a tough thing because it may be that you're just not that attracted to him. But if you look at him objectively, like you saw him on the street or you just met him and you find him physically attractive and you like the way he smells, you know, that core kind of pheromone connection, right? Then this really is in that scenario of what I like to call girls who are stuck in the bad boy syndrome. So here's how it goes, you know, and I like that you're in therapy and doing this work, and it may be that this is another layer of the onion you now have to peel away in therapy. But basically what happens is you intellectually at least want to be with the nice guy, and you know that you deserve that intellectually, right? But then as you see him being so consistent and so wonderful to you, there's a part of you that thinks, well, if he's that into me, he must be a loser, right? Or something's wrong with him because on a fundamental level, you don't think that's what you deserve. Now, take it from me as someone who was raised by a narcissistic father. You are the children are an extension of him. So there's a lot of criticism and core sort of emotional abuse because, because they feel so bad about themselves, and you're nothing really but a reflection on them. So there's, they want to shape you into some image that they can't create for themselves. And you can't measure up to that in the same way they can't. And it sets you up for really low self-worth. So while you may have done a lot of work, hopefully in therapy around healing and not choosing those narcissistic men, you may have some more work to do around really claiming how worthy of love you truly are, and how those stories that kind of got imprinted in you by your father and maybe even by your mother who enabled that, are not true. Those are illusions and reflections of your father's insecurities and his issues with self-worth. And so that is where your work, because you're not going to be able to take in the love of a really good man if you don't feel like you deserve it. Otherwise, you're going to push against it. And if your system is really used to the adrenaline of the chase and trying to get the love of someone who will never think you measure up, then you feel like that's missing and that you don't have the passion when you're in a peaceful, loving relationship. But that's not what a loving relationship is supposed to feel like. That's just the only kind of loving relationship you've ever felt. You understand? Starting with your dad. But that's not real love. That's not even real passion. Passion is not about despair and the chase. Passion is about depth. True passion in a love relationship is about depth and connection and soul to soul touching and, really going intense in that connection with someone who you can be totally vulnerable and safe with. That's true loving passion in a loving relationship. And you've never even touched that. So I think you can use this, even if you don't end up with this guy, maybe you will, hopefully you will, you can use this relationship and therapy to really move through this process and recognize what you really deserve and how to cultivate that love in a healthy way in a loving relationship, okay? And if you're not attracted to him physically and you don't find him physically attractive, but he's just a nice guy, let him go, because then none of what I just said is applicable.